Check 1 2 1 2. Check 1 2.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. If you would be kind enough just to take your seats and we'll try to get started. Thanks very much. The music sounds interesting. Okay. Good afternoon to all the leadership of the Divine Nine and all of the membership here assembled from your respective sororities and fraternities. This is a great day to show both visibility and substantively the collective power of Greek organizations on public policy, the local, state, and federal levels. My name is Richard Taylor, and I serve on the board of Union Chapel Educational Cultural Institute, along with Karen Holmes Ward, Louise Johnson, Cindy Carter, and others. And I came to this Greek world in 1968, Gamma Chapter, Boston University, when our founder, Bishop Edgar Amos Love, left Howard University and came to theology school in Boston. Hence, the third chapter of our great fraternity was in Boston, so I'm glad to be here in that respect. We envision this forum for Greek leadership to really come together annually and to show your work, whether it is in voter registration, health equity, affordable housing, sustainability, education, and so much more. We were all founded in many ways to create community. Some on HBCU campuses, some on predominantly white campuses. But it was all about community as college classmates, as alums, and now in society. And I could go down the list. If I think of my fraternity, I think of Benjamin Mays. If I think of the Alphas, of course, you got to start with Dr. King. The Deltas, Dr. Dorothy Height. With the Kappas, Johnny Cochran. Here with us, with the Iotas, Shelley Stewart. And the AKAs reminded me, Kamala Harris is on their team. So I could go on and on. Every organization has very, very strong leadership that has played a role in the fight to make this country a more perfect union. And so we want to have you talk about that. So we want to, this is the first year, where's Karen? I got to give Karen credit. She was the one who, stand up, Karen. You know, I'm the front man, but she's really the one with the ideas and everything. So she said, I think we ought to do a Divine Nine event, and I think we're going to keep doing this. So we want you to recognize this as the first start but the power of the Greek organizations collectively can have an impact in this country. And you know where we are in this country. You know where we are. So it's time to stand up like we did back in the old days. Okay. I want to let one of our major sponsors come up just for a second before I go to Mark Moriel. Our brother Michael Curry from United Healthcare, please come forward. Mike is the Chief Health Equity Officer for United Health Group.
Thank you, my brother. All day long, to the day I die, good afternoon to all in attendance guests, illustrious guests, non-Greek guests, all who have joined to listen to this important conversation. It's a real pleasure for me as a proud Omega man and Morehouse man to be able to support this conversation. As you get ready to leave, since we're getting ready to get started, if for whatever reason you did not get a hat, the hats will be there on top of the piano. And as you depart, in the back corner, there is a box of sunscreen that we all need. So please grab some sunscreen as you depart. Thank you and enjoy today's discussion.
Thank you, Brother Curry. It's my pleasure to introduce a national leader in the fight to make this nation a more perfect union. The former mayor of New Orleans, where he served with distinction, and is the presenter of the State of Black America annually. Now, I have a standing joke with Mark. I don't know that he will remember it, but many, many years ago, not really a joke, it's a background. I met his dear father, Ernest Dutch Moriel. We were having a law school conference at Dillard. And at that time, the young lady that I was dating was from Boston College. She joined me there. Now my wife of 51 years. But I had saw Dutch maybe about a year and a half after that first meeting. So he said, Richard, after we chatted, he said, did you marry that young lady? I said, Dutch, I did. What'd you have in mind? He said, well, I have a daughter, and if you didn't marry that young lady, I want you to come down to New Orleans. So I teach Mark, if somebody else had had the way, we'd have been in the same family, okay? But I'm happy where I'm at. I got that out there. Woo! Woo! So without further ado, the national president of the Urban League, the Honorable Mark Moriel. Please give him a hand. My man.
Richard, thank you very much. First of all, good afternoon to all. I would be remiss if we did not, at the inception, just take a moment to recognize Professor Charles Ogletree, for whom this public discussion and forum is named. The last time I saw Professor Ogletree was on this island about 7 or 8 years ago. A giant, a great lawyer, a professor, a brother and a friend to many, and God took him home too early. But if we could take a moment of silence to remember Professor Charles Ogletree. Thank you very much. Let me acknowledge and thank also the leadership here, Richard, at Union Chapel, who continues to bring incredible thought leadership to the island, not only throughout the year, but in the month we are here during August. And also thank all of the sponsors who have enabled this discussion to take place. I've been asked to create some context around the Divine Nine. I am Alpha Phi Alpha. I am a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Let me tell the story in this way with my personal story. I'm a third generation Alpha. My grandfather was a member of Beta Chapter. He graduated from the Howard University School of Medicine in 1922. My late father and uncles and extended family members were Alphas as I grew up. But my father was also Alpha Phi Alpha's general counsel, and from 1968 to 1972, served as Alpha Phi Alpha's general president, the youngest person other than the Jewels to serve in that job. He was chosen and elected at 37 years of age. So my family vacations entailed going to Alpha Phi Alpha conventions. That's where I met my first girlfriend. That is where I had an opportunity to meet Muhammad Ali, to meet Ron Dellums and Jesse Owens and Ralph Metcalf and A. Leon Higginbottom and many, many incredible great leaders and icons. And it is where, as the story was told, as a little boy at 4 or 5 years old, Alpha Phi Alpha held its annual convention. Brother General President, where are you? In Washington, D.C., at what was then known as the Sheraton Park Hotel up on Woodley. You all know that hotel. I think it's been demolished. And the brothers and sisters assembled there wanted to use the pool at the hotel and were denied, the children who were there, the use of the pool. But then one brother by the name of Adam Clayton Powell got himself involved in the conversation and went to the management of the hotel and said, if we can't use the pool, we will all check out forthwith. So why do I say that? Because the Divine Nine have never been about frolic and fun. The Divine Nine have always been about purpose. So I want to acknowledge all of the leaders of the Divine Nine who are with us today, who are going to take this panel and speak. If you all would stand so we can acknowledge you. We have General Presidents Paul Marks present with us today. But give me a few minutes. Let me go back to Plessy versus Ferguson. And Plessy versus Ferguson, which brought in the system of legal segregation, demanded and required a response by the generation of that time from Black America. And part of that response was to build institutions. They built institutions. They built the NAACP. They built the National Urban League. They built the National Medical, National Dental, National Bar, National Funeral Directors. They responded by creating organizations as we were removed from the mainstream on college campuses. In 1906, at Cornell University, have you ever been to Ithaca? It's cold. Not just cold, real cold in Ithaca, New York. These 7 young black men initially organized themselves as a social studies club to find a sense of camaraderie and peer support in an environment where they were isolated. However, there were 2 or 3 members of that group who had student jobs. Those student jobs were that they worked inside of white fraternity houses. And as such, they had an opportunity to witness rituals and handshakes and symbols and gestures. So they came from that experience, went back to this social studies club, and said, we need to be something different than just a social studies club. We need to create a fraternity. It set off a mini civil war. And one of the founders, a graduate student who had been involved in that group, decided he was going to get out of there and left these 7 young men to create Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. From the very beginning of Alpha and every one of the Divine Nine, it was about the first, if you will, black student organizations on mainstream campuses, and to some extent on HBCUs, the first social action clubs or first social action initiatives. The point today is, if you look at our leadership, I'll raise the hand of the National Urban League, where I'm proud to serve as its 8th president. All 8 of us have been a member of a Divine Nine fraternity. Six of us have been alphas. 1 has been a Q, and the other a Kappa, but all 8 of us. And if you look historically, even today, at many of our local affiliate leaders, they are Deltas, they are AKAs, they are Alphas, they're Kappas, they're Qs, they're Zetas, they're Sigmas, they are Divine Nine. In many respects, and I know I just got a minute, in every respect, we must understand that what the Divine Nine was about was leadership development. It was through Alpha that I learned parliamentary procedure. It was through Alpha that I learned how to organize an agenda for a meeting so there wouldn't be chaos. It was through Alpha that I learned how to organize forums and events and social events. It was through Alpha that I learned as a college student how to go to the graduate student and get a forgivable loan for our chapter. It was through that we developed our leaders. So what is important today is, as this discussion ensues, is that we must stand on the foundation of purpose, and stand on the foundation of purpose and define today what that purpose is really all about. We have challenges with civic engagement, with economic empowerment, with black men, with the racial wealth gap, with the achievement gap, with health equities. So I issue a call to action for the Divine Nine to not only continue, but we all have to elevate our game. Elevate our game and recognize that the founders of every single one founded these institutions. They may be called fraternities, they may be called sororities, but they are much more than that. They're institutions for social and economic change and transformation through collaboration, through brotherhood, through sisterhood, and through a sense of family. So congratulations, let's have a great discussion. God bless.
Thank you, brother-in-law. Thank you so much. I wanted to read something very quickly before I turn it over to Donna. That was great. I don't know if I can totally get through it. I received this email on August 3rd. Hi, Richard. Just wanted you to know that Charles's journey on this side of heaven is coming to an end. We started hospice care on July 19th, and he is now in the process of transitioning. I will never be able to thank you enough for creating the public forum series right here in his honor. This summer's program is extraordinary and exceeds anything I could have imagined. I'm blown away by how much it has grown over the years, thanks to you. Well, thanks to many. Hope all goes well this afternoon. Forever grateful, Pamela Ogletree. This was a half hour before our first forum last week. Her husband is dying, and she has time to thank us for what we did. So we appreciate that. But it was our considered opinion 4 years ago, not when he was near death, but 4 years ago, that he could never be forgotten. And so with all of the corporate sponsors, all the programs, Karen's leadership and others, we've now indelibly marked his name in the history of this island and therefore in the history of the country. I'm very proud of that and thank you for coming. Let me now introduce Donna Jones Anderson, who is a national president of the National Panhellenic Conference. She's been great helping us. It's hard pulling 9 organizations together. Give her a hand, please.
Good afternoon. I won't belabor because we really want to hear from our national presidents. But I wanted to say welcome to this forum. NPHC is so important, and I just love working with all of the organizations together. We're a powerful force. We can be reckoned with. When they see us coming, they get scared. So we want to go to the state houses, the federal houses, tell our legislators how we feel about things that are going on in our community, and make them listen to us and vote for people that think like us. We have so much to do in 2024 with the election coming. You'll be hearing so many things about how we're going to collaborate together to try to bring betterment to the United States. At this point, I would like to introduce our presidents, and I'll start with the first. The first fraternity was Alpha Phi Alpha, as you just heard, and their grand president is here, Dr. Willis Lanzer III. You can come up. I lost all my notes, so I don't know what happened to my phone. So we have Alpha Kappa Alpha, Sorority Incorporated, is led by Danette Anthony Reed, International President and CEO, and representing her today is Alicia Pugris Spearman. And she's a North Atlantic Regional Director in this area. Next, we have in founding order 1911, Kappa Alpha Psi, the national Grand Polemarch could not be here, but Jimmy McMickle sends his greetings to everyone. 1911 also have the next fraternity, Omega Psi Phi. And it is led by Ricky Lewis, straight out of California. He reminds us all the time that he lives in California and it's warm there. And it's warm here also. Next, we have my sorority, 1913. We were called Deltas, we're called Divas, we're called Dolls, and we're called Deers. But we always call our national president, Sor Elsie Combs, international president and chair of the board of directors. Next in line after Delta was Phi Beta Sigma, the men in blue. Blue Phi Beta Sigma is led by Chris V. Ray, JD, the new president of Barber Scotia College. Next, we have a finer woman. Dr. Stacy N.C. Grant of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, international president. Next, we do, our chair of the Council of Presidents could not be with us tonight, Rashida S. Liberty of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. However, there is a representative, and if you can tell me your name. Camille Barla, and she is the Chief of Staff for Mayor Adams. And she's representing Sigma Gamma Rho. They are our centennial sorors, and we want to remind them of that. Last but not least, Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, their Grand Polaris could not be here. Dr. Sean D. Housen, Sr., but Shelley Stewart is here representing. And he is the chair of the One Iota Foundation. So I want to introduce Karen Ward, who will be the moderator for this event today. And she is the host of a TV show in Boston. I didn't even know that. WCVB in Boston. So if you haven't checked her out, please do so. You can go online and watch her. So she's here.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Donna, and thanks to everybody for being here today. It's so nice to see a full house. I'm going to see if I can sneak up here on the stage and take a seat here. My full name is, first of all, let me say I'm not a member of one of these fabulous Greek organizations. I like to say I'm in Me Phi Me. I know you all have heard that before. Okay. My full name is Karen Holmes Ward, and I happen to be related to somebody on the panel. See if you can figure it out. Can you figure it out? Okay. Thank you, Mark, for setting the stage with the history of the importance of the D9. This afternoon, we do want to have a conversation with all of you. We're going to be passing the mic back and forth. Please feel free to talk and respond to each other. In case you don't know, the name of this panel is the Divine Nine Power Brokers for Positive Public Policy in Voting Rights, Education, Health Equity, and Narrowing the Wealth Gap. And this afternoon, what we want to do is have a conversation about how the D9 might activate its membership around social action, which is exactly what Mark was talking about when he was relaying the history. So, you know, with the campaign and election win of the AKAs, Kamala Harris to Vice President, the D9 and its power seem to explode into the consciousness of mainstream America. I'd like to ask and start with our AKA person sitting right next to me. What change have you noticed, if any, on how mainstream America now reacts to your organization?
Well, they know what pink and green. They see a sea of pink and green and wonder who are these beautiful African-American women, but they also know that there comes power behind that pink and green. It's more than just a pretty face. There's intellect, there's action, there's power, and they're starting to fear us. Because with all that's going on, I'm a lawyer, these crazy SCOTUS decisions, we need the Divine Nine more than ever, because we're gonna fight back and counter Edward Bloom and his ridiculousness by going back old school, while Mark Morial mentioned, with the NAACP, Legal Defense Fund. We need our lawyers in the audience to galvanize more than ever to make sure that we're combating this powerful conservative force that is coming forward to try and deny diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think that they're just scared, and that's why they're doing all this craziness and trying to tilt the clock backwards, and we're not gonna have any of that, are we?
All right.
Amen. And I want to add to that, what we continue to say as leaders of the Divine Nine is that we're 2.5 million strong. We shift culture, we create policy, we really make the difference. And we came together to support our vice president. We were all strolling to the polls to make sure that she was elected. And when we understand that great power, it's just like a parent that has multiple children that all express themselves in different ways. Each of us have a part to play, and when we come together, there's nothing that we cannot do. And what they're afraid of is what we will do, which is reclaim what was stolen from us. Our history is American history, and we will not be silenced.
Let me say, can I say
Yeah, I'm going to ask the guys in a moment. Let's let the ladies go first.
No, just to add, I'll say amen to both of those. But just to add, you started out saying they are scared. And we know we have seen that across the organizations because of the increased visibility, but mainly because of the power that they know we wield. And if we work as a collective, and that's what is so important, we work as a collective, all D9 organizations. You heard from the Urban League. You talked about the NAACP. The leader of the National Council of Negro Women is here. And so we have so much that we can do if we just band together. Now, we were able to do that in 2020. And with each passing election, I know you all know, we keep talking about this is the most important election of our lifetime. We said that in 2016, and we just gonna keep moving. We said that in 2020, and we came out as a collective effort, yes, to support our D9 sister, but also to support the issues that we know are critical for our people. We're all nonpartisan organizations, but that does not stop us for advocating and really standing for the issues that we know can either positively impact our people or negatively impact our people if we don't continue to speak up and if we don't continue to work together. So just like 2020 was the most important and 2022 was most important, 2024 is coming. The mobilization has already started. And we cannot sleep on that election. We have to be full throttle now. So is everybody in?
Everybody's in. All right. Now, you know, since Vice President Harris' election, a lot of the attention has been paid to the sororities. I want to hear from the brothers. What, Ricky, have you noticed in terms of the response to the Qs since the election of Vice President Harris?
President Biden know who the Qs are. They know who the Divine Nine is. They know Zeta Phi Beta. I mean, he literally knows us when we walk in. The President of the United States literally know all of us by first name and organizations when we walk in. So Vice President Harris bringing that to the table, we literally are in the White House now. We're brought to the table on many decisions that are made. They can't win without us. When we vote, we win. In 2024, we're going to win again. Y'all receive that? Yeah, 2024, we're going to win again. So Vice President Harris has just brought some pink and green to the White House and all the Divine Nine colors to the White House as well. And we thank her for that. Every time we see her, we thank her. She always calling us. I think we've been to the White House now 4 or 5 times in a year. I don't think too much go down in terms of what's happening with us in our community without them calling us. We're trusted messengers. We're trusted messengers in our community, and that's what Vice President Harris has brought to the table.
Yes, sir.
So for the election, I think that one of the things that have come out, not only just for Phi Beta Sigma, but I'll say for all of our organizations, is understanding that strategically now we have to create other institutions that are going to be a part of the election process. So all of us now have our own PACs. And there was a big conversation in the past about PACs, and it's still a huge education piece for our community to understand the power of political action committees. So many of our organizations are formed to be nonpartisan, right? But PACs allow for us the ability to raise money for issues that we know are important for us. It allows for us to be able to support candidates that we know that we can hold accountable. It gives us another avenue for us to advocate as organizations. And I think that is what has come out of this past election, that even more of us now know the power of having our own political action committees and understanding how we can now find opportunities for us to impact policy, which is really the driver behind all of the things that are impacting us in our communities.
All right, let's transition to conversation about voting rights.
Can I mention one thing?
What efforts are underway? Yes.
I just want to say one additional.
I'll give point of privilege to my sister-in-law.
I'm not trying to take up more time. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows anyone who doesn't have a PAC, one of our organizations has a C4, a 501c4 organization. So Delta, I know the Omegas have one. So some of them have both, but if we don't have that, we have a 501c4 organization, which allows for increased advocacy, which allows for educating and making sure that we have our people, especially in our case, Black females, ready to run for office. It allows us to support, to endorse specific candidates. And so it is an arm. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knows that we have one or the other, and sometimes both, to make sure that we can operate in that space.
Okay. Let's talk some more about voting rights. We've been talking about the last election. Let's talk about what's coming up. Nearly 4 million members of the D9, by most estimates, 4 million people across this country and, of course, across the world. What efforts are underway to make sure that D9 membership shows up at the polls again in the next presidential election?
Well, I can speak for Alpha Phi Alpha, but encouraged by our preliminary conversations amongst the Council of Presidents, we recognize that you mentioned 4 million Divine Nine, but you have to think about the extension of our contact. It's bigger than 4 million. And it's time for us to become more tactical in our approach and create new tactics around this. Voter empowerment and voter education is very important for Alpha Phi Alpha, but for all of the D9. But I think our opportunity is with who else we bring to the table. Inter-organizational alignment. For example, we've already gotten commitment from the Scottish Rite 33rd Degree United Supreme Council, Prince Hall Masons of the Northern Jurisdiction to align with the Council of Presidents for the 2024 election. That's out-of-the-box thinking. It's not just dependent on the organizations that we know, but bringing new players to the table. I think that's going to make a difference. We have to become also, and I'll relinquish the mic in 1 second, have the opportunity. Well, I'm not your sister and brother-in-law, but I'll work on it. I'll work on my timing. No, but thank you for the grace. I think it's important that as we are discussing as the Divine Nine, and we have a great working relationship which helps us to dispense with some of the challenges when it comes with different organizations that run independently of everyone. But we must recognize that our overlap, our similarities are where we now need to align. And when we see threats, we need to bring those threats to the table so that we all can recognize and ensure that our internal seals, our internal operations are protected. And more importantly, we galvanize a plan that we all can implement, at least top 3 prongs, in concert with what we already do. I think it's going to make a difference. We're about to receive that, and I'll relinquish the floor to
Shelley Stewart.
Yes, I agree with everything you said, and on behalf of Alpha Phi Theta, what we've thought about already is not to wait till the year of the election, right? What we've started to do inside the organization is make sure chapter by chapter, community by community, we are focused on voter registration. It's an important aspect to success, and I actually believe we have a good machine, right? And that machine is the members of our organization, their extended families, the places they work, the places they influence, and we've already begun to work in our communities and making sure not just our graduate level, but our undergraduate levels members are out there now, setting it up, beginning to work.
Thank you. So first, I just want to take a moment and say it is so beautiful to be on stage with such powerful leadership, as well as to look out into the audience and see this incredible partnership as reflected by the membership here in this church. So a few things. I think one, if there's nothing else that we should have taken away from the previous federal administration, it is that what our ancestors, what our elders have been saying, which is that the civil rights movement is far from over. Every single day, we are in the struggle for every single right that we should have as human beings on this earth. And I think that what I am seeing is a galvanization, not just at this level, but also with our young people. And I think that there is an opportunity for us to unify and to really focus that energy. So as I think someone on the panel has already said, it is beyond the 4 million members of Greek letter organizations. We have youth affiliate groups, we have other relationships. Many of us are parts of several other organizations, and we should really be thinking about how we unify and project that unity so that they truly understand that we are truly a force to be reckoned with.
I did want to offer one thing. Pardon me, Sister, Madam President. I did want to make sure that we don't lose sight of something important. We're talking about the 2024 election. Every election, every election is important. This 2023 one with the gubernatorial races in Louisiana and in Kentucky, the Mississippi race, all of these races are important. This is how we lost our efforts to keep the courts balanced, because we only were thinking about general presidential election years. We have to be present at every election, at all.
Absolutely. I just want to add a piece to what all of my colleagues are saying. It's not just the voter registration, and yes, we have to make sure it's all elections, it's voter education. We're living in a time where a lot of our community, they're overwhelmed with what they see and want to give up. We're losing hope in the process. So voter education is something that Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated is doing, as well as our colleagues, because we need our young people to understand civics. It's not always taught in school, so they don't understand the power in who we elect, from a student school board to a mayor to a council person to a judge. So that education process is very important right now, that we're relatable, because sometimes we look like we're untouchable as members of our organizations. We have to go into the barbershops and the beauty salons, the supermarkets, and have real discussion on how voting impacts what you have available to buy in your supermarket, what public transportation is available for you to go to work. So we need to bring it down to the granular level so that this voter education has our community excited about going to the polls, ready to deal with all of the challenges that we see happening to take our vote away. If we weren't that important, they wouldn't be trying to disenfranchise our communities going to vote. So the educational process is what's critical right now, so that our younger Gen Zs and below, they are more enrolled in the process and understand it's not just my mother's fight or my grandparents' fight or that was the civil rights movement. We are actively engaged, and we need to make sure that they understand the reason why they're voting and who they're voting for. What is their track record? What have they done? Start holding people accountable.
I want to ask many of you on the panel, to talk about the D9's support for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, what you're doing to lobby Capitol Hill and the White House in that area.
So that was gonna be the next point, right? I was about to jump right in on that to talk about how, first of all, as an organization, that is one of our main focuses, is getting that passed. But I think one of the things that we have to remember as Divine Nine organizations is that in this fight that we're in, it's absolutely a fight that we have to be in together. So when we talked about voter registration and we talked about voter education, then the third piece of it is the voter mobilization, right? Which means that on election day, it should be all of our organizations together, pooling our resources together to maybe have one van or two vans that's moving around the community. So what I would hope and take away from here is that as chapters, as you're in your chapters, I hope you're all financial, as you're in your chapters, and I'm gonna put it out there, it's real, and if you're not, we need you. And the reality is that if you are, your chapter should be partnering with your chapter, another chapter in the same community. It shouldn't just be the alphas trying to move folks around. It shouldn't just be the sigmas trying to move folks around. It should literally be the sigmas, the alphas, the Qs, the kappas, and the iotas together. And so that's the mindset that we want you to take away from here. And a part of it is lobbying your representatives when it comes to that bill. That bill is just live and still well. We just have to continue to have our voices heard on that.
How do we do that? How do you do that?
Let me help you out here, Sister Karen. One of the things, and I got to go back to some things that formed as a result of the 5 fraternities coming together in 22 for the first time on the Hill. we decided that it's time for us to leave the pettiness of our first 100 years behind, and that now it's time for us to align and make sure we can work together. I've already made a commitment to the Omegas and to the Sigmas, and will make it to the Iotas and the Kappas, that when they go to fight wherever they have to have their convention, the Alphas will align with them and support them to make sure that if they've got to be in a place, we'll come and help them rally for votes. We'll do what we have to do, the heavy lift. We have to break down the internal walls, but it's up to us as the leaders of these organizations to help beginning to massage the old bones and the old facets. Yeah, we play, but it's time for us to get serious.
So the
and align
leadership,
together.
has aligned and working
right.
together on Capitol Hill. What can you say to the members that are here in terms of what they can do to push for the passage of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, specifically?
I want to go back to a couple of things. One of them really is around that education. And it is really breaking it down to what's in it for each one of us. So everyone in this room, what's in it for us, but then looking out in our communities to really break the message down to what's in it for them. And the message is not our forefathers died for voting, though we know they do. That might be a message that resonates with us. But think about the messages that need to resonate with Gen Z, that need to resonate with someone who might be a boomer, but for whatever reason has never voted in their lives. So we have to identify ways to get to the places and also break down the messages. And part of that message is not only on the issues, but the importance of the voting rights issue and the importance of protecting the vote through the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And so it's just absolutely critical. It's really around the education, though, and breaking it down into what it means, what it will mean to do, what it will mean to not do. And we can't do that in enough ways, whether it's going to all the various places like you talked about, whether it's sponsoring virtual forums, whatever we need to do to get the message out, but again, make it, it's really a what's in it for me so that others will want to really fight for the message.
From the AKA, since they got a woman into the White House, what are we gonna do now?
Well, I think voting is obviously just basic, but you have to start thinking about social advocacy, right? How much do women make compared to white males, black women? 67 cents on a dollar. How many African American females run single family households? How many grandmamas are running the households? We have to advocate. So for instance, Alpha Kappa Alpha had a Paycheck Fairness Act. We did a petition, had 11,000 people sign it, but to their point, 200,000 went on the website to learn about it because we just don't know about these issues. So what kind of burns me up is I see some millennials and Gen Zs out here and even baby boomers. You can't just go on social media and rant about something. If you haven't called your legislator, and I mean your local legislator, your congressman, your senator, if you haven't written a letter, you are actually doing nothing. When you show up at AK Days at the Capitol, they see you storming the Capitol, and that's what really makes a difference and gets them scared, and they have to act. They track the number of calls and the number of letters that they have come in. So it's really about voter advocacy at all levels, as the brother back here said. The gubernatorial races, you have to vote in every election at every level. And also what we're doing specifically is also we're getting a list of our people who are elected officials and who are seeking to run. So we have organizations like Greater Heights of America and other PACs that specifically work to get African American women elected. And that's where you have to put your dollar. Now let me tell you something. You're gonna go buy a Gucci bag, you're gonna go buy different stuff. You can give $20 to a congressperson or a senator, whatever it takes. That's why we're here, and we should pay homage to Professor Ogletree, who started this movement here on the island. For those of us who've been coming year after year, this is why now, in August, on Martha's Vineyard, this is where the black influencers and change agents, where everyone's coming. That's why we're getting all this corporate sponsorship now. So I encourage you to just keep following the Divine Nine and what we're doing together. But as we mentioned before, we're doing it also now with the NAACP, the Girlfriends, the Link, the Moles, all those other bourgeoisie groups. We're working together to make a change.
I want to transition to this next point. Thank you. In case you haven't heard, there is a war on woke. Have you heard about the war on woke? Oh my goodness gracious. This gets back to what you were just saying about challenging at every level, not just in the presidential elections. So what steps can be taken to challenge parents, school boards that want to ban books from schools and public libraries, our history, our authors? And what about legislative efforts to prohibit certain topics, courses, books, et cetera, that are being taught and or used in school environments? What can we do to combat the crazy war on woke?
Well, I would like to start with, if I may, there are two areas. One is very convenient. We need to vote. We don't get out and vote. We have the power to vote folks out from school boards and other elections that we have been not participating in. But the other one is to create new tactics, like the economic prong. And I'm not saying it, but I'm telling you in the sense that we refused as Alpha Phi Alpha, because we were able to do it, to give Governor Ron DeSantis any more dollars and take our stuff someplace else. Everybody can't always make those decisions because they're business decisions. But whatever you do, you go in with a plan. You go in with tactics that you're going to protest certain actions and go to the Capitol, or you're going to make sure you uptake local issues. You push dollars to black businesses when you do go to the city that you're going to convention in. But more importantly, we can't think monolithically. Just boycotting doesn't do it. We have to have multi-prongs. That's why we have to think about new tactics when it comes to efforts to protect entities like foundations that are geared towards our community when they're attacked. Now it's time for us to come together and talk about new strategies. Some of it, we might have been caught a little flat-footed this time, but not moving forward, because we're thinking different.
How many educators are in the audience? Just a show of hands. I mean, I'm concerned about the lashback against our educators who are trying to teach our history. What,
Yes.
what can we do?
So, just really quickly, and off my brother, Dr. Lanzer, I think folks have to remember that this fight you got to be in the fight for the long haul. We sit here today and we're comfortable, but we're comfortable because of those who's fighting before us. And so we're just in a different kind of fight today. And the reality is that you have to be literally committed to this. We're proud that, Professor Ogletree, he was a member of Phi Beta Sigma. One of the things that he shared with us a few years ago, the word strategy was a part of his vernacular, that you have to come at a problem in many different ways. So whether it's pulling out economically, or it's us leaning in, realizing that we now have to find a list of their own books that we need to go ahead on and pull off, and we need banned now, because there's some Mark Twain things that we feel uncomfortable with. And so we're coming at a different angle as members of Phi Beta Sigma down in Florida. And so what we have to recognize is that you have to literally hit them where it hurts in multiple places. Just like they're trying to hit us in multiple places, we got to hit back in multiple places. That's why leaning in on different organizations is critical in knowing who our power is. And that's the messaging for us.
Tell us more about the Mark Twain strategy.
So we're building, I can tell y'all, we're building a list of books that we don't feel comfortable with down in Florida. So I want you to stay tuned. There's a list of books that we don't feel comfortable with. When we're done with them, there won't be no books in no libraries then. Because the reality is that if you're not going to teach our history, we can't teach yours either.
I love that.
Okay?
And I want to build on the power in doing that, because what we are allowing are people who, some don't even have children, but want to galvanize around what they feel comfortable with and twist reality and try to reverse the truth of our history. And if we sit back and think that, oh, it's just Florida, we're sadly mistaken. Because if it goes down there, it will start to permeate throughout the rest of the country. So our voices have to be louder than ever. The God I serve tells me that with righteous indignation, we can stand up against the things that are not supposed to be and speak out with the power that is residing in us to shift what we see happening, because authors like Zora Neale Hurston, who's a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, is a classic. Why should that be removed? Why do you not want your children to know about Ruby Bridges? We can't pick and choose what we teach our children in this country. We've come too far, worked too hard for a group, a handful of individuals to try to shift and change the reality of our history and our progress. So when we talk about the list of books, it goes into showing up at those parent-teacher meetings, showing up for those school board meetings, and reversing the vote. They get to vote because not everybody shows up.
Right.
We are the leaders. We know the black and browning of this country is a reality. So they started playing chess instead of checkers. We have to stop being late to the conversation and show up with our numbers, with our knowledge, with our words on paper that can never be destroyed, and the reality of who we've been called to be as a people. We sit here as a result of those who sacrifice with so much less than we have. So we are called at a time like this to do even more. So we won't be put in a fearful position. We're not going to be reactive. We're going to be proactive in our approach. Our members are on the ground, galvanizing around local elections, looking at how soon we can shift some people out of office so that we can get back to what we know we were on a trajectory for. This is a minor interruption. What you focus on expands. If they get us confused, if they get us fearful, then they get us off our game. Stay focused on who we've been called to be. Know what the power is that resides in us, and let's get to action.
Shelley Stewart.
Yeah, so Karen, I want to expand on what was just said here, because it isn't just about books. There was a recent article last week in the Wall Street Journal called "The Demise of Diversity." If you haven't seen it, you need to go read it, because I lived in the corporate world for 40 years, right? And they're after DE&I, they're after every black person that's in the building, right? And so the issue here is, and by the way, it's a bunch of people that have nothing better to do. Stephen Miller and some of these folks from the former administration, right? And they are suing corporations. And the question is, and I was just at a conference with some of the largest corporations in the country, and I had a conversation with Jamie Dimon, and I said, so what are you going to do? He said, we're not going to back off. So we have to force...
Jamie Dimon, Bank of America.
J.P. Morgan.
J.P. Morgan Chase.
Oh, anyhow,
sorry.
The point I was trying to make here is that we need to put the pressure on corporate CEOs as the Divine Nine as well to make sure that they don't backpedal, because supplier diversity programs will be taken away, and all the diversity impacts in our corporations will disappear.
Do these corporations understand, Shelley, the business case for diversity? Do they understand the buying power of the African American community and other communities of color, or do they just don't want our business?
Look, I can just say this to you. I have 12 jobs, and one of my side jobs is I chair the $1 Billion Roundtable. It's the 37 corporations in America that spend $128 billion with minority, women, LGBT, and veteran businesses. They get it. Now, do we try to get the other corporations? We're trying to lead the way for all the other corporations to make sure, because that's an impact in our community, by the way. And we track the number of jobs created in the black community, the number of dollars provided in the black community. So it's important. I can't tell you if they all get it or not, but unless we make a conversation about it, they're not going to get it.
Karen. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, just in terms of we have to be at every space, and we have to take advantage of the spaces that we're in.
That's right.
Our Soror Shirley Chisholm said, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Now, we know the folding chairs take on a whole different meaning this week, a whole different meaning. But, however, the point that she made back in the early 70s, as she was the first African-American woman to run for president of the United States and be part of the nomination process for a major party, but it's every table. So you talked about the parent-teacher conferences. It's every form of government, but it's in corporate America too. We've asked about educators. How many of you are in corporate America? I hope you're taking advantage of the spaces that you're in. because it's absolutely critical for those of you who are in the room to make sure that you're making that case. Because sometimes we go and we get a little comfortable, or we might even be worried about our job, and so we kind of sit back. This is not the time. 2023 is not the time to sit back. We have to take advantage of every single space, every part of government, every part of corporate America, and whatever profession that you are in. Because it started with, yes, it might have started with education. It's going to corporate America, but they're trying to make this permeate throughout everything in every state.
Yeah.
So we might think it's Florida, but that's the other thing we're doing is educating members across the country, because it's not enough to educate just those in Florida, because it's happening in your state. You might not have heard about it, Rick.
That's right.
But it's
happening in
your
Massachusetts, in some of the suburbs of Massachusetts.
Right.
You know, liberal Massachusetts,
Right.
But they're trying to infiltrate at the ground level. Back row here, sir.
I just wanted to encourage us to develop one last talking point because we've touched on it. I want you to look to your left. This is like Sunday morning. Look to your right. Some of you are going to have to run for office too. We can't just sit. Some of us are going to have to, and I'm talking about young brothers and sisters as well, because we have to have warriors at every level. And we've talked about what's happening in the school board or in the county commissioner, city council, you name it, but unless you run or support someone in your community who can run, we'll lose that change agent proxy too. Any elected officials that are in here right now? Stand up. All right. That's good to know. And as I relinquish, Sister Karen, what I was going to say, our Divine Nine, I believe all of us are doing it, but I'll speak for Alpha because I can be specific. We're helping to cultivate new political strategists and folks who will run.
And help them with their campaign
finances. Help them with their campaign financing.
That's right.
And how to run it.
And that goes outside of your state you live in. Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester was here. She is going to be the first person in the U.S. Senate. Not the first person, but she's going to be the next U.S. Senator. But that's because if I'm in Connecticut and you're in D.C. and you're in Florida, send money to her campaign. That's the kind of no-holds-bar action we're going to have to do to educate and advocate to get us all elected, right?
That's right.
So this is really important.
Right, send it across state lines. Support everybody, everywhere. Even if it's just $20, $30, $50, it all makes a difference, right?
And we have several African American females running for Senate. And so, 3. There are 3 currently running for Senate. So we, members of the Divine Nine, they run the gamut from Alpha Kappa Alpha to Zeta Phi Beta to Delta Sigma Theta and Sigma Gamma.
And there are 2 alphas too.
And 2 alphas too. Okay,
There are 2
so I didn't
alphas
mean
too.
to leave out the
No,
guys.
well, I got to make sure you know.
That's right.
I was
Just so you know.
Just so you know.
All
so
right.
you know.
I was being specific too, though, in this particular case, because one of the things we do is through our D4 Women of Action, and our president of D4 is also here, Rhonda Briggins. And one of the things is the Chisholm Jordan Institute, which is focused very specifically on training and making sure that there are resources, but just initially training Black women to be ready to run for office, and making sure that those who are already running for office are ready to give it their all, and that they know what to do. And it does take money, so all of us, we're gonna need to dig deep. We're gonna need to dig deep.
Yes.
We have one gubernatorial candidate, Brother Sean Wilson in Louisiana. He's an alpha. And let me just say this real quickly. Even though sometimes you may not feel they have a chance, support them. We have to encourage them. They may be able to break the threshold if you support them.
And get the name recognition. Maybe they will lose the first time, but the next time maybe they will win. All right, is Michael Curry still here in the room? Michael Curry from United Healthcare. Here he is over here. You know, Michael stepped up early on to be the lead sponsor for this forum. Michael was very concerned about health equity and the health of our community specifically. I want you all to discuss any programs or projects that your organizations have that are focused on the health of African Americans?
Oh, well, I'm gonna tell you right now,
Go
Phi Beta
ahead.
Sigma, we're all in. We just launched our partnership with Black Health Matters organization. Very critical for us, but we are in the early stages of laying this strategic plan for us to have our own hospital one day. And so this is not a drill for us anymore. We recognize that Black men's health there's more attention that needs to be made. And so what we're focusing on right now is making sure that the programs that our brothers are leaning into is not only for their own personal health, but the messaging that if you're not around, then you can't take care of your family, right? And that's critical. So these old days of not figuring out, or you have this pain here, or whatever the case may be, and you don't want to get it checked out, we're changing our messaging to our brothers that prevention is the key for them and their longevity. But then we're also leaning into figuring out how we're going to work within our communities as it relates to more our clinics, and then eventually grow into our own hospital that we know will be focused in on research that's for us in our anatomy and our physiology, and how we can make sure that the medications that are being made by some of these drug companies we know are really not for us. And so that's the first messaging that we're now leaning into, because long term for us, we're going to have our own hospital.
And we need to get into the clinical trials so that those
Which we all
medications-
partnered with, which
That's
we all
right.
partnered
That's
with
right.
right now
That's
with our
right.
clinical trials.
Go ahead, Ricky.
Yeah, let me say a piece about, as the team can tell you, I talk about it all the time when we're on Zoom about self-care. Yeah, we need to do it, all of us, because we're running back and forth. We need to do it and set the example for our membership. 1, 2, Black men are suffering quietly.
Mm-hmm.
Black men are suffering quietly.
Tell it.
PTSD is real. Depression is real. Black men are suffering. And then they do something to themselves, and now they're not here to take care of their family. So we're asking Black men, particularly Black men, and asking Black women to help us, to make sure we go to the doctor, get these numbers checked, go walk, hydrate, watch what you eat, be conscientious of your health. And that's what we have to do. It's very, very simplistic. We all have to challenge each other to do that. And that's what Omega Psi Phi doing, all of us in the Divine Nine are doing as well, that we have to challenge each other to do better. Let me yield to Sister Grant. I know she want to make a comment.
Thank you, Brother Ricky. So one of the things that was critically important to us as members of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated was advocating for health justice at home and abroad. As our organization was the first to found a chapter on the continent in Liberia, we realized that if we don't have health anywhere across this globe, it is something for all of us to be concerned about. So our focus on health justice was clear because of our longstanding partnership with the March of Dimes and our Stork's Nest program, and really advocating for healthy babies, but taking it far above that, knowing that health justice touches everything from our work with diabetes to cancer to autism to mental health. We just signed an agreement with Mental Health America because that is one of the underlying factors for a lot of what we see happening. So our health justice campaign has expanded and will continue to expand to make sure we're doing just what President Lewis just said when we're talking about self-care and taking care of one another, but also expanding that work to all of us that we are involved in as a Council of Presidents. Good Health Wins, being able to all in for Good Health Wins, our NCNW president is here. But it's important that these messages get out into our communities. And what I found, if we don't take care of ourselves, and as an organization back in 2010, we started Z-Hope, Zeta's Helping Other People Excel, as our signature program, mind, body, and spirit. If we don't take care of ourselves, who are we helping to excel? So we have to make sure that we're checking ourselves, because all of us get busy. We all have a lot of things to do, but our health is our wealth, and making sure that each of our members not only are equipped to do it for their own families, but the communities that we serve to have those real-life conversations. We've had health justice panels throughout our last program year where people have shared that they don't have a space all the time to ask questions about their even maternal health, about regular checkups that they don't get, and they're suffering in silence. So no longer can we suffer in silence. We have to be able to have these open forums where we can ask questions without judgment. and get the information that we need so that we can produce the results in our own homes and in the communities that we serve. So we will continue our banner under our extraordinary she, advocating for social justice, health justice, and economic justice, because when you're broke, you're sick.
If I would say that for Alpha Phi Alpha, that was a nice zinger there. Can we record you? Can we record you for that one?
Say it again.
If you broke, you're sick.
Yeah.
I might have to use that tomorrow. Anyway, no, I think what Madam Ambassador said is absolutely right, and how ironic the parity that's happening across the D9. When I became the general president of Alpha, I appointed our first Surgeon General for our internal education, because black men are in denial about our health. Brother Fredericky, when he came on board and he started saying the things he says, I smiled, because I have been saying similar things, and Chris and I have been saying it, and others who had served with us. But the challenge that we have is to get our brothers and sisters to raise their education so they can be better advocates in the community about health. When we talk health equity, women's rights, women's ability to have reproductive rights, and it's beyond just abortion. This is helping people who can't have children to be able to have children. So it's multi-pronged, but I think the chief piece that I wanted to share that's in reciprocation to what the Zeta Phi Beta sorority is doing is that we are definitely trying to educate our brothers on the baseline, helping to have that difficult discussion about even going to get a prostate check. And I said it in DC, I'll say it again, if you're concerned about having a male urologist, get a female one. And her fingers are smaller. It's just real. No, it's real.
Yeah.
This is real. These are real discussions. And we think it's light, it's laughter, but it's the difference between life and death for some people. It's the difference between knowing that, yes, your PSA may be up, but a digital rectal exam could have told you months ago that you had challenges coming. So we have to be realistic about this. We have to be realistic about cancer, and we've partnered with the American Cancer Society, the Ora Lee Smith Foundation. We're partnering even around mental health and with disabilities. Yeah. We are recognizing social determinants of health as being an issue in our community. Everybody's touching on it, but I hope in the next year even, will align better so that we can help elevate all of our organizations around those pieces that impact you and how you can gain, not only through language barriers, through educational barriers, but also through financial as well as access barriers for help. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah. I'll just talk about health equity. You know, as African Americans, it doesn't matter about your economic socio status, right? Socioeconomic status, it doesn't matter. You don't receive health equity when you go to the hospital. So what Alpha Kappa Alpha is focusing on is black maternal health. You may have heard about the Olympian, Tory Burch, I believe is her name, who died because the doctors didn't listen to her and didn't pay attention to what she was saying. Preeclampsia runs high in our African American community, right? Serena Williams. These are athletes and stars. Our very own
wealthy people who can afford the best of health care.
Right, right. Alexis Asoroor, another Olympian who had preeclampsia, they didn't hear about her. Her job didn't want to give her pay equity when she went back. So she had to start her own sneaker company. So when we talk about that, there's another topic I want to talk about that is, I know you don't want to hear about it because it's depressing, but suicide among African Americans, when did we start doing that? But let us know that Alpha Kappa Alpha is focusing on it because our young black males, the rates have doubled in the last 10 years. So if you're not in your church and you're talking about mental health, we're trying to destigmatize that. We're making it a part of a normal conversation. We keep talking about education because this data and the stats tell the story. So when we're telling you that the rates of the youth from 10 to 17 are doubling, we want you to pay attention. We're telling you now the next rate of suicides that is increasing is African American women. We have to pay attention to this, educate, and say, what does your insurance pay for? Our people don't know about NAMI, right, the mental health institution. They don't know that you can go and find a culturally competent provider that's gonna listen to you and understand you and that you can relate to and go ahead and have some mental health wellness sessions. So it's a multifaceted problem when we talk about health equity, right, mortality, and mental health. All of that is important.
Our last item on our conversation today was about narrowing the wealth gap. How does the D9 help us do that?
Thank you. So I want to make one comment, just piggybacking on what some of the language here was, what we were talking about. While the men are not okay, I will tell you who's really okay, not okay, and it's our children. Our children are not okay. The mental health challenges that are being faced by young people these days is absolutely incredible. In the last year since Mayor Adams took office, we have taken over 11,000 guns off the street. 11,000 guns, because our kids aren't just putting up fists and saying, let's go have a fight. They are shooting each other. They are hurting each other. And so Sigma Gamma Rho, through its youth symposium and several other programs that we have, are very focused on finding alternatives for our young people to feel good about themselves, combating bullying, and making sure that they have productive things to do when they get out of schools. So I really want to make sure that we are all very focused in thinking about that. From an economic perspective, we need to be funneling our money into minority-owned businesses. We have to understand that that is typically the seed of generational wealth. And so we, like many of the organizations here, we certainly have our own programs for our members, as well as programs educating the communities. And I encourage you all, and certainly what we are doing in New York City, is working to set up a partnership with the Divine Nine, because rather than reinventing the wheel, we're all focused on the same things. You have a city, the largest big city in the country is run by 3 women of color who happen to be 3 members of historically black sororities and fraternities. That is not an accident. When we get in the room every single day, we are sitting down and we are thinking about what is our life like, what are our challenges, and a part of that has to do with economic issues and making sure that we are bringing together the programs and bringing those programs to the community so that we can all be focused on moving us all forward as a community.
I know we'll all.
Yeah, Elsie wanted to make a point about the health or.
Okay, so Sister Cook and I, we're both conferring on what we're going to answer really quick, and then I'll give the mic to her too. She wants to respond to the previous question as well as economic development. So really quickly, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, in my first year in my administration, we launched Women Who Win. So that's a focus on women-owned businesses within our organization, as well as the phases that we have that will support those in community, understanding the importance of entrepreneurship. The whole D9, we have been able to enter into a partnership with JP Chase, where we're educating our members and the community about the different paths to wealth and what legacy wealth looks like, and making sure that we're intentional on how we are educating our young people. We have our youth groups as well, that we're able to have them involve themselves in learning some of the things that they should know prior to going to college about how to make decisions. And we have a MasterCard program that we have HBCU on the green, that we're working on creating these debit cards, credit cards that are not preying on the ignorance of our youth, but explaining to them how to manage money. So we have a whole Office of Economic Development that I've created to make sure that we're answering that call and placing the right information in the hands of our members and community.
So just a couple of things regarding, if you look at the last issue, we were talking about the health inequities. But knowing that we have the health inequities, social determinants of health, the things that impact our communities, that has an economic impact as well. So one of the things is focusing on the health, physical and mental health. And the one thing I wanted to mention about that, because we have a number of programs, in essence of time, I'm not going to talk about all of them right now because you asked us about economics.
That's right, because I want to get some questions from the audience too.
But what I do want to say is that we have a renewed focus and a new focus on wellness. And so the new program is Live Well, with a big focus on wellness, but especially mental health and wellness. We have a new partnership with the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and we know how critical it is in our communities. And as the other panelists, as my sisters and brothers have talked about, from our children who are dying disproportionately all the way to seniors. Seniors, it's not talked about a lot, but seniors, that's another area that suicide is growing amongst our seniors. And a lot of people don't talk about that. But hearing about members of our community that are resorting to that. And so really looking at those types of issues. But I would say if you look at it, move into the economic piece, it is one of the key pieces that impacts economics. But we have a number of programs under our Financial Fortitude initiative that really are going to support our economic development. From our Delta Red Tank, which supports entrepreneurs and gives them grants to help their businesses, from our Red Pages that really highlight those businesses, to really a big focus on entrepreneurship, and some of which we are all involved in because we all have a partnership, all of the D9 organizations, with the Small Business Administration, to really look at how we can have counseling, capital, other things to help entrepreneurs, and also we have other programs that really are focused on that financial fortitude and building generational wealth from our youth all the way to our seniors.
Back row on economic, narrowing
So
the wealth gap, and then we're going to get an audience question.
So Russ and Phi Beta Sigma, one thing that has been critical and what I've learned being the national president is that for as educated as we are, we're still so uneducated. Right? And so one of the things that I've realized is that we talk about our economic power as organizations, but until you can truly measure that economic power, you're just throwing numbers out there. So we started an initiative where we are now asking our members to turn in receipts for black businesses that they absolutely work with, from the folks that you cut your hair with, for those of you who still got hair, to your folks in your lawn care, all the individuals that are black-owned businesses. And what we've learned is that in the span of just 2 years, we went from knowing that we were giving $4 million as a total organization to last year we tracked over $10 million. And that's for brothers who turned in their receipts. And so now what we're hoping is that at the end of this year, we're going to truly see our economic power. Now, what I would challenge all of our organizations is for us to, if we already have some of those tracking and mechanisms, is for us to truly put a real number together to show this is what our worth is as a combined organization. Right now, I can say us is 10 million, but I know that it's far more than that. And that's the critical piece. So when you talk about narrowing the wealth gap, it goes back to my sister saying we have to identify organizations that look like us, companies that look like us, that we're going to patronize, but then also make sure we track that so that we can truly talk about our power as organizations.
I agree.
All right. I can tell that you are a Delta, but tell me your name and where you're from.
Z. Scott. I'm from Chicago. I'm president of Chicago State University.
And your question?
My question goes to what is going on with our black students in higher education. The rate at which black students are going to college in this country has dropped 17% in the last 10 years. In Illinois, it has dropped 37% since 2013. So I'm challenging, the question I'm asking is, what are we doing to encourage our youth to make that, which now a fragile transition from high school to college, and once we get in college, making sure that we are staying in college, and then making sure that when we make that transition with a degree, that we're making that transition with a career with family-sustaining wages. Because the data shows when our black students leave college with a degree, they make less, and they're in the positions that they're in are more fragile. So that whole trajectory for black students is fragile. Chicago State is the only predominantly black four-year university in Illinois. And that PBI designation is one that we received from the Department of Education. So and there are 9% of black students attend PBIs, and 9% of black students attend HBCUs. So we have to be mindful that we are supporting students, that we're supporting black students in our PBIs, and we're supporting black students in our HBCUs. And we are a member of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund.
Thank you. So we're going to have two people answer.
Yeah.
Just two people, so we can get to more questions.
So I'm going to jump in real quick and say, again, I'm a young college president, right? So I'm just getting started. But what I learned is, and what I understand is, to your point, the cost of education is just out of control. It's just out of control. And so until we strategize as organizations to figure out those barriers, families are not able to send their kids to school the way that they can. And so we, from the federal government having access to dollars for Pell Grants that we're now finally just getting back. So when you look back about 5 to 10 years ago, the war that was on on young people, specifically our community, getting access to Pell dollars had got decreased. And so when you look at the trajectory, those numbers fell during that time period, and only in this administration has we now seen a revitalization in refunding of some of those programs. The cost of education is out of control, and we just have to figure out ways to figure that out. That's what it is.
And one other piece along the lines of strengthening the pipeline is also us as unique organizations building partnerships with universities and trying to find unique ways for us to not only buoy our students once they come to college, but also in our continuing efforts to mentor young men and young people to go to college, to graduate from high school and go to college. So our scholarship efforts, that's one of the reasons why internally we have been supporting each other's scholarship funds, because we recognize we touch different people. Yeah. We touch people that are in different echelons of the society, but I think there's some unique partnership opportunities through building relationships between companies and universities and the fraternities and sororities that are existing. We've got one with Indiana University School of Business, with Notre Dame University School of Business, Tulane University School of Public Health. We have one that potentially will be coming out of the East at a university in DC where they were founded and the Sigmas were founded, but I'm trying to get that settled
Howard
down.
University.
And I'm just messing with them, just messing. But I think, overall, just trying to come up with unique tactics, because the cost issue is real, but also the sustainability in resources or the lack thereof is also very real.
All right, thank you. Tell us your name, and are you in a sorority?
Yes, I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta.
Okay, tell us where you're from. Your name.
Hello, my name is Michelle Bryan, and I'm actually from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I wanted to circle back on a question that was actually posed by the moderator. She asked what were these specific organizations doing to help get the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed. The reason why I want to circle back is because we didn't get an answer. When it came to health and money, people were able to name specific programs that they were doing. They were able to, talk in great depth about what we're doing on healthcare and give you the names of those programs, talk in great depth about what we're doing on financial literacy and closing the economic gap. As I am a chief of staff in a state senator's office in Wisconsin, and I have to just be honest. In our state, outside of Advocacy Day, we never hear from any Greek letter organizations. There is no campaigns around critical race theory. There were no campaigns around Black history education. Outside of Advocacy Day, and I work for an AKA, and if she was here, she would vouch what I'm saying. These days to me become photo ops. They don't feel like real substantive work. And so I just have to ask the question, could you be specific about what it is that you're doing around the John Lewis Voting Rights Act? And I'd also ask what you're doing at the state level, because we can tell people to vote all day, but if we can't fix redistricting the way voting is done, you can vote and it still not have the impact that we need because the district lines are drawn so badly. There was not a single Greek letter organization that was a part of any redistricting lawsuit that we saw that came forward. So, we talk about chess and checker. I'm saying that as we talk about one of the most critical aspects of why I came today in terms of voting, we've got to be able to be at the table. So I just wish you'd speak to that.
All right, we'll have two answers.
I'm gonna let
Two answers.
I just want to say one thing. I'm sure.
No, go.
I'm sure most of the Divine Nine organizations have public policy forums. I know that we have one coming up on September 19th, I believe, in Washington, D.C., on Capitol Hill, where we're having the executive and legislative branches come to us in Congressional Black Caucus and tell us what issues they're addressing and how they need their help. So sometimes we need to hear from the legislators who are at the table so we can direct our organizations and tell them what we can do. So from a bipartisan perspective. So I'll let you answer too.
Yeah, if we can. I just want to mention one thing quickly. Delta Sigma Theta is involved in 2 lawsuits with respect to not only voting, but it's all around voting rights. It's around redistricting. It's around the whole component. And we are in partnership with NAACP Legal Defense Fund in the state of Georgia and in the state of Texas. And so those are very active both lawsuits that are happening right now. Sora Briggins is one of the ones who has testified in Georgia, and we have another Sora on our Social Action Commission who will be coming up with her testimony starting in September. So that is one of the key ways. The other thing is it's not too early to start thinking about census. You know, we talk census 2030. I know we're only in 2023, but you have to have those strategies ahead of time. So
I hear this sister saying she needs some help in her state. Just everywhere.
Well, I can't, yeah, right.
Okay. They want to know specifically about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act.
So I think the John Lewis.
Hold on, let me just say, because I mean, I don't know if you didn't hear me, but we've had our chapters literally making phone calls. We've had our members sending the letters to our members of Congress. But let's be clear, it is stalled. Okay, but we've done our part. What we have to do now is send more people to Congress to be able to vote for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act.
That's why
we have done our part. And so what I think we have to recognize, what we have to recognize is that this is a long game. And a part of the long game is we are continuously advocating. We are continuously making sure that we're making our calls. But what we also know is that there's not enough members in Congress right now that is moving the needle. And so let's not forget that part. That's the part there. And so until we send more of us there, we're going to continue to make sure that we let our legislators in our more conservative districts who will not move the legislation do what they, let them know that we're interested in. But then we have this issue in this thing called the Senate, where we don't have enough individuals there to move the bill. The bill was passed in the House, and then it got stalled in the Senate because we don't have enough senators. So we need to send some of these other Divine Nine folks to the U.S. Senate so that we can get it on Joe Biden's desk for signature.
And just to reiterate the specifics, I think all of us are saying the same thing, that we're using our advocacy days. We have Zeta Day on the Hill on September 20th, so we're specifically talking about the act and moving and mobilizing our members to make the calls, but dealing with the reality of what's there. So I think that was part of what our sister
All right,
was
thank you.
If I could just do one
last
piece,
point,
one
yeah.
last point to the sister's point. That's why the 5 fraternities went to the Hill 2 years ago, to begin to make that move and talk to the congressman. But I will recognize a challenge opportunity for us to now elevate it on the state level, because that connection, that's an opportunity for us to do. So we'll take that away. I'm taking that away as an opportunity for us to try to elevate another component.
All right, very good, sir.
I'm coming to Wisconsin.
You got on Omega Psi Phi. Tell us where you're from.
I am from Indianapolis, Indiana. My name is Drake Rand. I'm a representative, I suppose, of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Spring 21. So my question was a little bit similar to a question that's been asked before, but separate. I would love to know from each of you how you intend to drive undergraduate representation within these programs that we've discussed here today.
And we'll take 2 responses so we can get more questions in.
So we have engaged our undergraduate leadership on our international board to be a part of conversations, and we're intentional about adding our undergraduate leadership to our committees that are advocating in addition to our youth. We have for the first time established with our youth auxiliaries their own sort of governing council where they can create dialogue, information, and advocacy. So we're empowering them to be at the table and not be told after we have made decisions what we're going to actually implement, but we've invited them to the conversation so they can keep us relevant and they can have a leadership position, because we can't just call them the future without empowering them with the access to the table so that they can give their input and be a part of our next generation of leaders on our executive board, nationally, regionally, state, and locally, inviting our chapters that advise our undergrads. We don't need to tell them what to do. We need to create a safe place where they are growing into who they're becoming.
Yes, Shelley?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because our foundation, which I'm a part of, just kind of rethought that specific idea. We said we're going to have associate members from our undergraduate ranks as a part of our foundation so that they can learn what this foundation is doing and they can add value to it. So part of the strategy is bringing them in early, creating a sense of leadership, making sure they own some of the ideas, not just us sort of seasoned folks, making sure that they can add value. And I think it's starting to work for us.
All right, thank you very much. Sir, where are you from?
from Minneapolis, Minnesota. James Burrows, a proud member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And I have a request. A lot of you have had conventions in Minnesota recently. I've met quite a few of you. Brother Lewis, good to see you as well. And Sister from Zeta Phi Beta, I got a chance to meet you there as well. I want you to consider this. There were 50 companies that when George Floyd was murdered on May 25th, 2020, who put a statement together they're going to protect their DEI programs. And now with this affirmative action decision, a lot of them are looking at scaling back. A strong, intentional letter from you to say, we're not looking for you to scale back, you have to step up, will help us in the DEI field. I'm a Chief Diversity Officer for a Children's Hospital, and there's a lovely Delta named Dr. Stephanie Barrage, who's the Chief Diversity Officer for the whole state of Minnesota, to say, you know what, we gotta step up because these 4 million plus people are willing to move their conventions away from our state, away from doing this work, because if they don't hear that, a lot of these programs will be cut, a lot of supplier diversity programs will be cut, and we'll be back in a position we don't want to be in. So I strongly request that you send that letter to these companies and also to these state CDOs who will be able to help move this work forward. So thank you for what you're doing, but I'm here to help and want to partner along the way.
All right, 2 responses.
So I think I would just add, and this I think connects a little bit to the previous conversation about our young people and them not going to school. Universities and colleges are challenged by the recent Supreme Court case in terms of what we are going to be able to do. I think the young people going to college, I happen to be the trustee for the State University of New York, which is the largest comprehensive system of education in the country. We have 64 schools, and we are already being sued on programs that we have: Hispanic Leadership Institute, Black Leadership Institute, all of those pieces. So I think on the community level, on the undergraduate and graduate level, I think that we have an opportunity to strengthen those pipelines and use our voices while our schools are trying to figure out exactly what they can do there. And with respect to your direct comments, sir, I stand in readiness. I'm not representing the international organization, but I certainly would encourage our international Grand Basileus to support a statement on that behalf.
All right, another response to that one?
Yeah, let me just say, team, it's important that you raise those issues to us. So many times we don't hear about this, so let us know about it. We are aware at the Council of Presidents, but more of our members letting us know what's happening in certain states and these companies. Like you said, you're willing to step up and help, and we need all the help we can get.
All right. Hello. Stand up.
Hi, my name is Sana Holly. I'm a member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, but also a member of Jack and Jill and a teen advisor for Jack and Jill. And the reason why I'm telling you that is one of the things I noticed in working with the teens there's definitely a disconnect between who we are as a Divine Nine and what we do. They know what their parents have taught them, and my child knows what I have taught her, but there's an opportunity for broader expansion of what that is as I sit there and listen to them talk about going to college and what they want to consider pledging and why there's opportunity. That's one. But the other part is that's another group where this whole challenge of dollars can be represented, because they have a lot of money, those children, those teens, because they don't have bills, but they have access to dollars. And so it's important for us to be able to show how they can spend their dollars where they choose and how we can influence that when we're talking about conversations with corporations. So I just want to remind us that there's a whole undergroup before you even get to college, that there's an opportunity for us to look at the dollars and look at the potential for influence before they even get to that collegiate level.
I'm sorry, the heat got to me. Did you tell us your name and where you're from?
Sana Holly. I am from Philadelphia, but I live in Maryland. Alpha Delta.
So I love that response because I am a proud associate of Jack and Jill of America, and my 2 sons were teen president and I was teen advisor, so I understand the power in that. And I think one of the keys is what we've all talked about: collaboration. When we collaborate with different organizations, we can bring more to the table because they're charged with making sure that they're in the community and not just amongst themselves living privileged lives and opportunities, but really out there having conversations with their peers. So I'll say one of the ways to engage is to have youth be the moderators and the speakers on some of these panels, so they're talking a language with themselves and not just listening to us pontificate ad nauseum, but for them to be at the table being able to share what is important to them in their generation. I'm a mother of a millennial and a Gen Z. They are interesting in the way they think, but it helps me to change my perspective and how I approach certain situations, and hearing their voice is what we need. The movers and the shakers of our civil rights agenda, they were their age. So we have to remember our founders were their age. So
Wasn't Martin Luther King 28 years old when he led the Montgomery bus boycott?
Exactly. So when we think about the power and the energy that comes in our youth, we have to celebrate that. And it doesn't look like how baby boomers did it. It doesn't look like myself as a Gen X. It looks different, and it's okay. We can merge modernity with the historical context and come up with a new way forward that we truly take the roles of the originators of all people.
All right,
I'm not sure how you characterize a former Jack father. I don't know that there's a status for that. I just know I worked for my wife when I was there. And my daughter.
As it should be.
You were a good pop. You were a good Jack.
As it should be.
And I was at everything that, and I'm like, where are the rest of the day? No. But I wanna be very clear with the level, I think this extends beyond Jack and Jill, but with the level of service that those young people are taught about, there's an opportunity for partnership with the Divine Nine, so that they can see that we don't just step, but we go out and serve the community. I'm not sure why it's not happened, but I think there's an opportunity, and perhaps if the council, just even without objection, agrees, maybe we can try to pilot something this year to see if we can see something happen. Does that make sense?
I think that you know, as a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, that we have our Youth Leadership Institute, and the premise is kind of like what you said. Stop doing the work for our youth. They're intelligent. Give them an outline, an agenda. Let them create the programs that are going to be meaningful to them, and then you will see how we grow. When you talk about learning about economic development, you all know that Alpha Kappa Alpha founded the first female black loan-led, created for members-only credit union. Start some investment, saving. We're not only focusing on that, we're focused on generational wealth, right? Estate planning. You know, I don't want to tell you what I have. We got to stop that. You die, and the kids don't know where the money is, where the will is. They lose the house on the vineyard. So there's so much that we can do. And the youth have the questions, and they ask the questions, and we say that's grown folks' business. Let our kids know, and they're intelligent. Let them grow. Let's work together to build them up, lift them up. One more thing I want to say is, though, besides the jobs, I'm corporate America too. Work for many Fortune 500 companies. I'm a lawyer. We start talking about in our sorority about getting to the C-suite. You get to C-suite jobs, right? We reach back and bring each other up. In a year and a half at my university, I increased diversity by 45%. So you have to walk the talk, but you have these education and forums so our kids don't just see working at McDonald's, being a teacher, being a lawyer. You see, wow, I can be on the board of Apple. And why is that? Because we have African American sisters and brothers who serve on boards, but we have to have that conversation so they understand what it means to be on a board, to have influence, to hire more people who look like us, to have policies that benefit our people. So I'll stop there. I had a lot to say about that.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is N. Scott Phillips, a member of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity, and a member of the Maryland General Assembly. And just, you know, when you talk to your children about those wills and estates, so you might have to warn them. I did that with my girls, and they thought something was wrong with me. So they thought I was about to die. Never mind. No, seriously. We talk about checkers and chess. In many respects, the conservatives are using the same model as Hamilton, Houston, and Thurgood Marshall. And in my sense, the only way we combat this, and this is my question, right? When we think about what has happened in education, I'm a business person, right? So I see the assaults against the SBA, and more recently, the assaults against the Minority Business Development Agency. And they're picking their courts, Texas, Wisconsin, Florida, right? You mentioned, my question, you mentioned that the Deltas have responded by also, I guess, writing amicus briefs or responding. How do we do this collectively? And in my mind, it seems that we should, on every one of these fronts, be responding with a legal response as well as we respond with our advocacy. Is that possible?
I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna get with these ladies real quick because you're absolutely right. I think that one of the things that I love about Delta Sigma Theta is that that they will be quick to put a pin. You know, they'll put an amicus brief on you in a heartbeat and make sure that they know that they're in the house when it comes to that. Now, I know that probably at different times in history our organizations have, but I think that now, from a strategic standpoint, it is a consistency now that we need to be able to do that. So I'm going to ask the women of Delta Sigma Theta to help the men of Phi Beta Sigma to come along for the ride.
We got you.
All right, because, you know, it does say Delta Sigma Theta, so just want to make sure we say that, you know, just want to, I see you did what I did there. Okay, I see what I did there.
All right. And I'll just say,
Sit down. No, I think it's important that we just had a meeting the other day where we're recognizing Bloom's actions and we're realizing that it's an opportunity for us to build consensus and agree to work on things together. You have to remember, and this is not an excuse but a reality, these are 9 different organizations. But we have to find those ways of working now to agree that we can come to consensus. I do credit all of the organizations that have taken amicus briefs. I know we did one in Georgia as well, or try to align along those lines, but we have to rethink our tools against these onslaughts. I'm appreciative of the leadership, and I'll give credit to the sisters in the room. You all have been doing things that are very strong and effective. The voting piece, you've owned. But the men have made our commitment to step up to that game and to get our membership motivated. That's why I'm glad you stood up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Sister Delta Sigma Theta, because I was the Midwestern Regional Vice President. And I know for Alpha Phi Alpha that we have to do a push out and continue to grow our efforts that we've been doing to ensure that on a state level, that in a regional level, when we're thinking about a regional strategy, that we can do those things. And amicus briefs are going to be those types of components. So I'm committed to that as an Alpha Phi Alpha General President.
yeah, and the one thing that I would add, because as I say, we didn't take those decisions lightly, but we felt that we needed to take action in a different way than the things we were doing with advocacy, because it's critical. And those were the 2 states that started, but we could broaden. But in terms of your question, I personally think, and hopefully my brothers and sisters here will back me up, but I personally think that we have more of an opportunity now than ever to be able to do that. You see representatives, and Kappa Alpha Psi is not here just because they just couldn't make it work. But the D9 presidents that you have now are committed like never before to working together. They are committed to making sure that our collective power is felt. And so the things that we have to do, because we all, as you said, 9 different organizations, 9 different boards of directors, 9 different organizations that have different rules and regulations that you have to satisfy, but be that as it may, but some of these issues require quick action. So the things that we can take quick action on, we do, and I'm encouraging us to all even take further action. You know, the minute these things come out, Delta Sigma Theta has a statement out there. We need to all have statements out there. We can't quibble about what the statement says. We just have to get this. I mean, it needs to say the right thing. Don't get me wrong. But if the and the and things like that are not exactly where they need to be, the biggest thing is getting out there and making sure our voices are heard quickly, and making sure that we are committed within our own organizations to pushing the priorities through, because we are 9 different. But we do stand for so many of the same things, and we know that our power as a collective is so much stronger. But so I think we can get there, and so we just have to be committed to do it.
All right, thank you.
My name is Naima Reed. I live in Switzerland, but I go to Phillips Academy Andover, which is a boarding school in Massachusetts. My question is, how do we encourage young people, younger than college, younger than high school, to become reinvested in the initiatives that sororities and fraternities are invested in? Until I was probably like 12 or 13 years old, I was so committed to being a city planner. I wanted to be a legislator. I wanted to help and re-nourish our communities, and then that desire went away. How do we put that power and that desire back into the youth and make sure that they know that their efforts are useful, and that our fight to gain equality and power is not over, and that we still have work to do, and that children are a part of this fight?
Let me applaud you for that question.
Yes.
That's a powerful question.
Absolutely. We can give her a louder applause than that.
Absolutely.
Coming to the mic to share a question. That's why we're all here.
Yeah, let me, Stacey, you want to go first? You want to?
I just quickly, I love that. And do you mind us asking how old you are?
I'm 16.
16.
All right now.
So, and not only, we were the first to establish youth auxiliaries, but we have 3. We have our Perlets, which are 4 to 6. We have our Meekets, which are 6 to 8. And then we have our Arcanets, which are high school age young women. So what we started doing is having those conversations early with our young ladies, and they are very proud and articulate because we bring them out for them to organize their own community service activities. They have sponsors who, of course, guide their work, but we start those conversations just asking them to dream big. Because somewhere along the line, as we grow older, other people try to tell us what we can be and what we can do, and we try to keep them guarded from that and be able to start doing actual community service as young as 4 years old, coming out and speaking and asking questions to elected officials, to other community-based partners. So re-enrolling them in this concept that they have a voice and that their voice matters. Through our youth groups, we're able to have those opportunities to be able to give them voice. They dress up, they get to a microphone, and they learn how to ask questions. We're in a church for this program. One of the best training grounds for your voice is the church when you get up and testify. So learning to train them in the way they should grow so when they're old, they won't depart from it. We do that through our youth programming, and then collaborate with other organizations that you've heard, like Jack and Jill, NAACP, Urban League, when they have those programs. But you, my dear, have quite a calling on your life.
That's right.
Thank you for asking that
I'm sure they're all going to
question.
want to get you to join one of their sororities.
And we will talk after the
That's
session.
right.
Yeah, I just think,
one more response to
I
this
just think
question.
I think it's important, and I applaud young sister. I think it's important to catch these youth a little earlier than high school, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old. We have a program, Youth Leadership Conference in Los Angeles. We've impacted the lives of 8,800 young black boys over the last 30 years. We know about Sigma Beta Club. We know about the Delta Gyms. We know about the Embody. We certainly know about the Kappa League. We just have to catch them early, and I think that's what young sister is saying. How do we engage them early, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old? And we just need to do a better job.
I'm sorry,
right, I'm
Sister
gonna
Karen,
get- no.
just one more, just one more. We have to build relationships with the schools where we are too. And that's where the opportunity, those programs we all have mentoring programs, but unless we can build relationships, especially for young black boys, they need to see people like you that are a state legislator. Who's that?
All right, very much. Listen, I want to remind everybody on August 16th next week, we have a forum here at Union Chapel, Unlocking the Power of Black Philanthropy. And on August 17th, opportunities in healthcare and life science and biotech for the black community. I'm going to give the microphone to Richard in just a second, but I wanted to say one other thing. My god sister here, Valerie Weaver, who's a Delta, that's not the important part. Our fathers pledged Omega Psi Phi together. My father is 97 years old, and your father
is 95, and they're still Omega men.
And they're still Omega men. That's right. They pledged at Case Western Reserve University. Yes, yes. So, Richard, I'm going to do one other thing, and then I'm going to give you the microphone. I wanted to have each of our leaders on the stage take 2 minutes. I'm going to be counting. 2 minutes. This is an energized audience. What would you, okay, a minute.
1 minute.
1 minute. 1 minute. What would you like this audience to leave with? What action item? Everybody's all pumped up. What can they do? 1 minute or less. Let's go in order. Go ahead. 1 minute.
I want you to be engaged for our effort to fight for the vote that's coming. This election and the one in 2024, that's not just voter registration, voter education, voter empowerment, voter mobilization. It's critical that all of us pay our dues, get active, get engaged, whatever it is, to ensure that we can get everybody and pull people you know to the coalition so that we can move it. That wasn't a minute.
I know.
But okay.
That's all right.
Idle time is the devil's workshop. Do not be despaired. We are Black people who come from strong ancestry. No matter what they put in front of us, we are innovative and we'll find creative ways to work around what they're trying to do to us. But you have to be engaged, you have to be brave, stand up and show out and activate and be an advocate for your rights, our rights.
Ricky?
Yeah, I would say ask questions, and continue to ask questions and challenge us. We don't have all the answers up here. We don't have all the answers. Continue to challenge us, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions.
Elsie?
Just focus on engagement. Be engaged. Some of you may not. There was a question about, is everybody active? Is everybody financial in your organizations? I dare say, and we know that everyone isn't. So for those of you who aren't, not only do we need the dollars, but we need your active participation. And even if you're not quite feeling like that you're able to deal with the dollars, I know I'm not talking to the right room though, because y'all are here at Martha's Vineyard, so y'all can pay your dues. But the point is, we need everyone to work.
Yes,
so if
yes.
it's the collegiates that just got out of school, either help her out, but just make sure that you stay engaged. And if each one of you do something, it makes the load lighter and it makes us be able to deal with everything.
Thank you. Back row.
This is not the struggle of a day. This is not the struggle of a month. This is a struggle of a lifetime. That's right. Understand that we have to be at this until you close your eyes and leave this planet and leave it better for the next generation. That is our calling. That's it. That's all I got.
In all our ways, acknowledge him, and he shall direct our paths. Put God first in what you are doing, so he gives you the strength and the wisdom and the discernment so that you can collaborate with somebody that you didn't know before you got to the vineyard. Make sure that you work on collaboration across organizational lines. Yes. We all chose different colors, different means, different mottos to the same end. And all of our founders knew this one particular important part is that for such a time as this, our organizations were put in place to effectuate change, to make sure that we uphold standards of excellence in scholarship and service. And what you do for God, for me personally, I'll just say, is what lasts. So if we do the right thing and we're guided by the right spirit, then we have the power and the strength to persevere through what we're seeing now. What you focus on expands. This won't be forever. It will pass.
Amen. Amen. Shelley.
Yeah. So one of our mottos in IOTA is citizenship, and we take it seriously. And my request to you is take it seriously, because if you think someone else is doing this job, they're not. You have to activate yourselves and the people around you to make sure things get done. It won't get done with just this group of people sitting here and the organizations that they represent. It gets done with everybody in this room and everybody in your communities.
Thank you. We are not the last, but I'm happy to close out this panel. We need to focus on how decisions are made. You need to educate yourself. A lot of these decisions are made on the local level, and we are not focused and we are not paying attention to it. You don't know what's happening until it gets to the United States Supreme Court, but it started oftentimes on a local level. We are already in many seats of power. Support the people who are in power and make them hold themselves accountable when they don't do what we need them to do. And I think the final thing that I would say is break down the silos. They have existed for too long. When you walk out of this room, when you're walking down circuit, when you see a sister Greek or a brother Greek, say hello, greet each other. It is incredible that we don't do that, but we have a unique opportunity in history in this moment to continue the partnership that I think is coming from the Council of Presidents, and I'm so happy that we're here to continue that message.
Let me thank Karen Holmes Ward. She did a wonderful job. Thank the National Panel Council. But I wanted to, just before I thank this, oh, I'm sorry. set? Everybody set? Okay, all right. I wanted to just give the young lady some specific information. The Real Estate Executive Council is a national black real estate firm around the country. We have a summer program for young high school students like you. See me after the program. We'll talk about your city planning, okay? Yeah. This is, as was stated, a long-term game. So we're going to be back next year. What I want to work on, my NYU colleague, we want to work on this matrix so we can do a report card. We want to put some numbers and some data up on this board next year. Some of you have talked about credit unions, you've talked about small businesses, you've talked about schools and so forth. We got to put some data up, voting, etc. I want to just underscore one point that I'll thank. Historically, we have relied on the Supreme Court and the federal government. Can't do that no more. The power is in the local hands now. Who's on your school board? Who's your traffic person? Who's your zoning person? We've been playing blue sky in D.C. Got to get to the local game. Everything the court's doing, back to the states. So enough to say. What we do know tonight, we're in great hands. You all were simply outstanding. Articulate, thoughtful. See you next year. Thanks for coming. See you on Wednesday and Thursday, 2 more panels. God bless Charles Ogletree. Thank you.
Graham to say goodbye. I got to run out. All right, cool. I just got to run to Melissa to the sunset with the family. I'll see you Tuesday night, though.
Come over and say, hey,
Good, out of bro.